So last week, I saw the movie Blonde on Netflix, and all I have to say is, wow, this movie is not what I thought it was going to be. And while this movie is a lot darker than I expected it to be, I still appreciate that it took the more unique and artistic path, with so much metaphorical, symbolic, and thematic imagery that I really want to break down. Like the mysterious picture of Marilyn Monroe's father, Marilyn's abusive mother, the consistent changes between black and white scenes and color scenes, her three-way relationship, the marriages, the abortion and miscarriage sequences, and the ending with the package, the phone call, and the letter. And I also did a lot of research to differentiate what was true in this movie and what was completely fictional. So I hope you enjoy. So to break this movie down, we're going to use three themes. One, fact within fiction. We'll discuss the main message of the movie, Marilyn Monroe compared to Norma Jean, the changes from black and white to color, and the photo of Marilyn's father. Two, sense of self-worth. We'll discuss Marilyn's mother, Marilyn's three-way relationship, the first abortion, and the abusive husband. And three, image over identity. We'll discuss Marilyn's intelligence, the John F. Kennedy scene, the playwright husband, the miscarriages, and the ending with the package, the call, and the letter. And much more. And if you like this video, please leave a thumbs up and a comment. It helps so much. And if you want to see more of these, please make sure to subscribe as well. Let's get started. Theme number one, fact within fiction. I feel like the most important thing to say to start off this analysis is that this movie is not a biopic. It's not entirely fact-based. Instead of perfectly documenting the life events of Marilyn Monroe, the film decides to take many creative liberties with its storytelling. The movie loosely touches on the most notable events of Marilyn's life, while also very often venturing off into more dreamlike and artistically blurry territory. And the reason the movie does this is to capture the confusion, the disarray, and the psychological trauma that Marilyn endured throughout her entire life, and also give us a much deeper understanding of the dark reality of Marilyn's life. So while this movie isn't entirely true from a literal standpoint, this movie actually reaches into the deepest and most honest truth of Marilyn's story, which is tragedy, disapproval, and a desperate search for self-worth. And it's the truth we rarely hear about. Quite early in the film, we see Marilyn in an acting class, learning a lesson from her teacher about how to inhabit a character and become one with that character. And at this same moment, we get our introduction to the Marilyn Monroe we recognize with that signature blonde hairstyle. And this moment also concludes our scenes with the brown-haired Norma Jean Baker. And throughout this film, we see our main character lose touch with the real Norma Jean as the iconic image of Marilyn earns an unbearable level of attention from the industry and media. Every single acting role and audition that we see Marilyn perform in this movie ties in with an aspect of her real life. And this continuous parallel between film and reality captures Marilyn's continuous struggle to differentiate the icon, Marilyn Monroe, from the human being, Norma Jean Baker. Norma receives no love and attention at all, while Marilyn receives all the love and attention, but in the most disingenuous ways. So her life is this continuous struggle between two very different identities. The movie also continuously changes its aspect ratio and color scheme, going back and forth between widescreen in color, closer to reality, to square screen with black and white, closer to 50s style film, further signifying this chaotic struggle between character and human being in Marilyn's life. And throughout the film, we often see the image of Marilyn's father as she awaits his return. However, this man is not actually Marilyn Monroe's father at all. Marilyn's real father is actually a man named Charles Stanley Gifford. He worked in the film industry and had an affair with Marilyn's mother. The picture in the film is a photo of Clark Gable, a world-famous American actor known as the King of Hollywood, who has been in countless classic films from the early 20th century. This image of Clark Gable, depicted as Marilyn Monroe's father, represents Marilyn's existence as the offspring of American Hollywood, and the hopelessness in Norma Jean ever discovering her true human lineage. Theme number two, sense of self-worth. Norma Jean was never given the genuine loving attention she needed as a young girl. Norma Jean Baker's mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, was abusive and severely mentally ill with paranoid schizophrenia. In the film, we see Gladys attempt to drive through the flames of the 1933 Griffith Park fire under the influence of alcohol and drugs, and even attempt to drown Norma in a hot bath. The fact that Gladys believes the image of Clark Gable is Norma Jean's father further signifies her mental instability, and Norma Jean's inability to depend on her mother in any way. Gladys abuses Norma Jean because Norma Jean, to her, is a living, breathing symbol of her failed relationship with a man who never truly loved her. Gladys has no sense of self-worth, so the concept of self-worth could never be taught to Norma Jean. And along the way of this movie, Marilyn is on a desperate search for self-worth and is taught about self-worth in all the worst ways by the shallow industry and insecure partners. She falls in love in a three-way relationship with Eddie and Cass, famously known as Edward Robinson Jr. and Charlie Chaplin Jr. This plot point is based on Marilyn's rumored relationship with just Cass, which is why in the movie she seems so much closer to Cass than Eddie. In the film, Cass and Eddie continuously live under the shadow of their iconically famous fathers and use the embrace of sexuality to have a loud voice and earn validation. And they teach these values to Marilyn before she can even make an educated decision about it. This decision, of course, skyrockets her career into being probably the most iconic sex symbol in film history. However, it pulls Marilyn away from her much more genuine passions like method acting, poetry, and fine art. And it's this body over mind mentality that causes her to have the first abortion. It's implied that Marilyn had the abortion because she didn't want her mother's mental illness passing on to her offspring. But clearly, that wasn't the real reason. We even have a semi-fantasy dreamlike sequence of her escaping the abortion clinic, claiming it's not what she wants. She had the abortion because of the industry's negative reaction. She knew, and they knew, the baby would have an effect on her body that wouldn't be as profitable. And everyone had this point of view, including Cass and Eddie. In this film, Marilyn also meets and falls in love with the ex-athlete, who is meant to be Joe DiMaggio in real life, one of Marilyn's actual husbands. He is like the antithesis, the polar opposite of Cass and Eddie. He doesn't like Marilyn showcasing and revealing her body at all. And at this point in time, I think many of us can agree that there's a happy medium with embracing sexuality and even being a sex symbol. I think if it's your genuine choice and you enjoy it and you do it in the appropriate environments, I think it can be liberating and allow life to just loosen up a little. But Cass and Eddie and Joe DiMaggio seem to fall a little too far on either sides of the spectrum. Cass and Eddie seem to encourage it for validation. Joe DiMaggio seems to forbid it out of fear. And Joe DiMaggio doesn't even share Marilyn's interest in classic plays and fine arts, so her sense of self-worth is warped once again. Furthermore, Joe abuses Marilyn when he sees any embrace of sexuality, most notably while shooting the famous dress-blowing scene in the movie 7-Year Itch. And this abusive event, of course, led to their divorce. Theme number 3. Image over identity. It's really a shame because Marilyn's intelligence is ignored and never appreciated or even acknowledged throughout this whole film. So she has to dumb down her talents in a more marketable and exploitative way, carrying on this metaphor of her being the offspring of the industry. She becomes this product to be marketed, distributed, and sold around show business. Her iconism is celebrated over her humanity, even after her death. And we see her literally get passed around before she's pushed into JFK's hotel room. This scene is of course based on a rumored sexual relationship with President John F. Kennedy. As he convinces her into various sexual favors, we get the visual of an entire audience witnessing it in the movie theater. And I'm sure at this point you completely understand the metaphor of her complete lack of privacy. The only man who seems to actually value Marilyn's intelligence and insight is the playwright. The playwright character is based on Arthur Miller, who was the husband to Marilyn in her happiest relationship, where she actually claimed it was the first time she had ever really been in love. However, of course, Marilyn eventually found out that Arthur was using her as inspiration in his work in quite unflattering ways. And this is cleverly symbolized in the film when we see his typewriter displaying the dialogue that we hear in the movie between him and Marilyn, promising he wouldn't exploit her in his work. So while Marilyn never grew up with true parents and could never meet a true partner, she also could never create a true loving child. It's popularly known that Marilyn Monroe was a victim of multiple miscarriages. A real one we witness in the film, and a symbolic one in the film that captures her desperate longing and failure to have a loving child of her own. So, with decades of no genuine love and no approval from family, Marilyn is driven into a desolate pit of addiction and numbness. However, the last thing Marilyn can hold on tightly to is the hope of her father's return, receiving letters from him every few years. And at the end of the film, Marilyn receives a call from Eddie. He says that Cass has passed away and has left a memento for her in a package. When she reads the letter and opens the package, we see the stuffed animal that Marilyn had earlier in the film. And we find out that Cass has always been pretending to be Norma's long-lost father. This letter and this whole ending is very much more symbolic than at all based in reality. For me, this letter represents Marilyn's intergenerational neglect and inability to encounter responsible fatherhood. Marilyn's biological dad was never the tearful father for her, and Cass was never the tearful, loving father for Marilyn's unborn child. Both biological fathers didn't want to be fathers. And this whole moment solidifies Marilyn's hopelessness in finding an unconditional, loving family. While Cass may have created this facade out of empathy to keep Marilyn going, this realization led Marilyn to an overdose and her tragic final moments. For Marilyn, a loving family will forever be a fantasy to dream about, and Norma Jean will remain hidden beneath the icon we never forget. Alright, this is my analysis. Subscribe for weekly videos and please send me recommendations. And please let me know your thoughts and ideas around Blonde because I know there's so much here to talk about. I hope to see you again and thank you so much for watching. See you later.